Welcome to the Public Works Podcast, where we talk with leaders shaping the future of our communities. I'm your host, Shane Silsby, and today I'm talking with two incredible guests, Elizabeth Raynal and Selina Brandon, to talk to you all about the efforts that they're undertaking on behalf of their chapters in the American Public Works Association regarding the Young Professionals Initiative. This program is aimed at creating opportunities for the next generation of public works leaders, and we'll dive into how it's making a real impact on careers, communities, and the profession as a whole. Elizabeth and Selina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, appreciate your time today. First off, as we jump in, can you just introduce yourselves? Obviously, I've said your name, but what your current roles are in the public works industry, or quickly how you got there so that they understand how you fit into the industry of public works. Let's start with Elizabeth. Thanks.
Yeah, Shane. So I'm actually a business development manager out of Roseville, California with Ghirardelli Associates. I've been in the industry about maybe 5 or 6 years now. My path into public works is somewhat non-traditional. I have an English degree actually, and when I was in my early 20s, I was living and working in national parks, Yosemite being my favorite. And I was a hiking guide there, and I wanted to figure out how I could stay there full time and actually make real money. So I got started as a science writer.
Science writer, okay.
Without a biology degree, though, I didn't get that far, but far enough to start a career as an environmental planner.
Okay.
Funny enough, though, once I got started in PWA, I quit that entirely and went full time into business development, which is where I am now. The way I got into PWA is like most people, I was voluntold to go by my boss. He walked in one day and he said, there's this group called the Young Professionals. They're meeting in Sacramento at a local brewery. Go check it out. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I went to this brewery, looked around, didn't know who I was looking for, but I did see a table of about 7 folks my age with name tags on, so I assumed it was them.
Yeah.
Sat down, got to know them. They were chatting about this mini golf tournament fundraiser. And then the next day, my boss said, hey, there's a YP director role available. We need to fill it. Would you take it?
The next day? Okay.
Yeah, went for it.
Okay.
And here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had the same thing when I was at the city of Phoenix, and my boss said, hey, you're going to this meeting. You need to represent the city. Go make this happen. And then here we are years later.
So now after that, I took on the Region 8 YP national role. So overseeing the California, Nevada, and Hawaii regions.
Which is Region 8, right? California, Nevada, Hawaii. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for that summary. Selina, you're up. Let's hear about your journey.
Yeah, so I'm a civil engineer in Austin, Texas. My degree is actually in biological and agricultural engineering. My focus was water and wastewater treatment technology. And I was very excited about the research and development in that. But then my senior year of college, I decided I really was tired of tests and I wanted to get paid. So I took a job in Houston for a small civil firm that did mostly water, wastewater impact analyses, things like that. And then after a year and a half there, I switched to my current company, where I work on a lot of dams and levees. But I also do construction management, still do the stormwater modeling side. I actually got into APWA by my own choice. I have a very type A personality, so going from being super involved in school and very excited about what I'm doing to have a job that ends at 5 o'clock and having nothing to do in the evenings, I was like, well, I need something. So I got into a different organization for a little bit and I just didn't enjoy it as much. And then I heard about APWA and I got involved, and I've been doing it for about 9.5 years now.
Oh, wow.
So I've been involved for a while on APWA. Very quickly, they asked if I would be the Texas chapter Young Professional Chair, which at the time was a title with nothing to do. So it was interesting. We've developed it into what it is now, which is a really active group. And through that, I got on the national board, and I'm currently the chair of the National Young Professional Committee.
Oh, that's great. Interesting pathways, right? You just start to get a little bit interested, and all of a sudden here you are 9.5 years later having a national role. So that's awesome. Well, let's jump into that a little bit, some of the big picture here and the vision for this initiative, to the extent you're comfortable with sharing your thoughts. For those that may not know, what is the American Public Works Association Young Professionals Initiative, or the thing you're working on as chairs and co-chairs? So what is it and what is its main purpose?
Yeah, so our big vision as a whole is to connect, develop, and empower young professionals. So the way that we do that is we create opportunities for students and young professionals to engage in the organization. We also work really hard to create educational opportunities that are relevant to young professionals in their careers. A lot of times in the industry, we get a lot of education that's maybe relevant to mid-level or upper level. So we work really hard to make sure that we're providing resources to young professionals that help them where they're at currently. We also work really hard to give the platform for young professionals to advocate for themselves and also kind of engage in the profession as a whole and learn about other opportunities and kind of see the big picture of what public works is, because it's such a broad profession. So it's kind of just trying to create this base of understanding what it is that we do and giving young professionals every opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, that's interesting. When we talk about public works on other episodes or shows, we just try to explain to people it's basically everything you see in the built environment, right? And so what is it? Well, it depends what you're looking at, right? That's what public works is that day. So appreciate that. Anything else that you wanted to add to that, Elizabeth, or maybe your current role, specifically how you're feeding in from the region into the national initiative?
Yeah, I'll just build on PW specifically. I think is mostly about building connections. YP is the first step into APWA, which gives you all the resources that Selina mentioned. But first, you got to meet the people and feel comfortable being there. I remember my very first chapter luncheon that I attended, I didn't know anybody. And I'm new in my career, and they're all very nice people, but they all knew each other, and it's a bit intimidating. And I saw one person that was at that YP meeting a couple of weeks prior, and I felt immediately relieved.
I see.
And then from there, once you start attending and getting to know each other, you start going to these things, and now everyone else is coming up to you because they know you.
Almost like anything, trying to identify with another person just to get started, right? And so younger professionals obviously may be more comfortable talking to each other. The definition of a YP here for these programs is what, Elizabeth?
Anybody under the age of 35, technically. But
Technically.
we always say we don't ID. So
You
anybody.
don't ID. Okay. Okay. Got it. So just go have fun, right? Meet folks and try to have a good time. You talked about some of the diversity from maybe an age level, but public works is a very dynamic field. You know, we talked about a little bit in what you see for public works, engineering operations, planning, technology. How does this initiative, the YP initiative, help young professionals find their place within such a diverse industry? We talked about just recognizing people maybe with similar levels of experience. But anything else? I think you might have mentioned like a gateway to other pieces of the organization and YP as a start. What do you think, Elizabeth and Selina?
Yeah, so
Go ahead, Selina. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that until you're really in the profession, whatever avenue you come into public works, you don't always fully appreciate the breadth of it. When you think of public works, I mean, we cover from conception of thought of a project to the completion of it. I mean, you've got vendors that handle a lot of the new technology. You've got engineers that design a lot of it. You've got city staff that both also help design and create this, but also implement it and make sure it's constructed correctly. I mean, there's a whole range there. And I think once you get into the industry, you kind of see where you're at. And it's like, maybe you love what you're doing, but maybe you want to be part of that initial phase, or maybe you really like developing technology that would make a certain project easier for others, maybe in asset management. And you see that vendor side and you're like, well, that's an exciting thing. I might want to get into that. And it just kind of opens up that knowledge base of what is possible in public works.
Yeah. So you all are kind of in the private side of it now, and we should say that public works is both public and private. It's just kind of focused on the public piece of the infrastructure, right? That people use, the public use. So that's interesting. I think, Elizabeth, when you and I talked at PWX in Chicago, you mentioned the potential for maybe a professional summit. Could you share what your thoughts are about that, or if you might have had one or you're thinking about having one, and how that could be a powerful networking or leadership opportunity?
Yeah, when we spoke, we just had our second in-person YP summit with
Okay.
107 attendees, which is a really exciting accomplishment. I'll probably pass it over to Selina to go into the details because she was the one on the back end of all the planning with our committee. Selina?
Yeah, so our YP Summit's a one-day educational session directed towards young professionals. So there's networking, there's learning opportunities from other leaders in the industry, and then also a lot of skills building sessions. And so it's a day tailored to young professionals in the public works industry and giving them the opportunity to learn anything related to their career and where they're at today. And so it's a great opportunity to bring all these different young professionals from across the country, even theoretically internationally, to come together and kind of learn together, engage together, build those relationships, and really connect as a young professional in this organization.
Oh, that's great. And was that summit virtual, in person, and was it tied to the national conference or just an ad hoc issue?
Yeah, so definitely it started off virtual. I think the intention was to be in person, but this was back in 2019. And when we were about to start our first in person, it immediately pivoted to virtual. So we had a few years of virtual, and then Atlanta PWX was our first one.
Okay.
Ideally, I mean, this is a separate from PWX. It's its own one-day educational summit, but we do have it on that Saturday before PWX because I think if young professionals are coming to PWX, it's a lot more accessible and you've got everyone there already. So we consistently had it on that Saturday before PWX just to make it easier for young professionals to access. Because it's harder to ask for your company to send you to a conference across the country and then also send you across the country to go to another summit for young professionals. So that's kind of where it's been. I think it sits well in that space, and I think we'll continue to keep it on that Saturday. Just everyone's there, the organization's there, so it works really well.
Okay. And Saturday is kind of when the national conference kicks off with all the committee meetings and all of that anyway. So you have other resources there if you needed to get some help or get access to facilities, all those things. So that seems to make sense. So that's good. And so the next one, potentially in Houston, you'll look to maybe have a summit there.
Yes.
And that will be the third summit, if I'm tracking right, or am I way off on numbers?
Third in-person summit.
Third in person. Got it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Thanks. Well, this next question is kind of about why you're doing that. Public work seems to function better through collaboration. And PW has chapters all across the country. And my understanding is that maybe the Young Professionals Initiative is looking at quarterly meetings between chapters, maybe some virtual touch bases. Can you tell us more about those, how those might work and the value those might bring to have a stronger nationwide connectivity for the young professionals community? And maybe Elizabeth, if you want to start, and then sneak over.
Yeah, I'll take that. So let's back up to why we wanted to start these quarterly meetings.
Sure.
We realized aside from the YP Summit and PWX, young professionals are not talking to each other outside of their own chapter or branch. So for the rest of the year, they're all operating their own little silos. They have these great ideas on what events to host, and some of them work, some of them don't. Sometimes they just give up entirely because they don't have the right resources to run these events or get these committees started. So our committee realized this and decided to create a regional outreach subcommittee focused on getting each region's YPs to collaborate. First, we had to figure out who the YP leaders are in each region, and that's a bigger task than we thought, but we're almost done with that roster that we have. And what we want to do with that is, depending on the region, have quarterly meetings or check-ins that are right fits for each one. For instance, some regions only have 4 chapters, some have 13 and a handful of branches. So the level of effort is different there. But what we want to do with that is to get each YP leader to meet each other in their own region, collaborate, see what's working, what isn't, and allow them to share the resources that they have so they don't have to start from scratch every time.
Got it. Yeah. So if they have not gotten started in YP, how do they know the first thing to do, right? So you're trying to help them kind of accelerate that initial step, which I think is important. Anything you wanted to add to that, Selina, that we might not have covered?
No, I think Liz really got it. It's really just about connecting people from different chapters. And like she said, it's so easy to get stuck in our silos and feel like what we do is the only way to do it. And it's really hard, especially when you're struggling, to feel like you have to be the person to solve it. And so I think our goal is just to make sure people know that this isn't a one-man show. Like, the support is there. Just because it might not have worked for you, might work for someone else, or maybe someone else has an idea that's going to be perfect for your area, that's going to be really great at engaging a young professional. So it's really just connecting them and doing that from the national side, where we kind of have a few more resources than I think a lot of the chapters do.
I see. And part of your thoughts for a chapter might be just try to get started, and here's some things to try or whatever. I mean, just starting is probably a big hurdle, and then you're into sustaining, right? So how do you sustain and get your membership up, things like that? That's great. And so how has that been going? I think it was like an idea or a thought. Any implementation on that yet, or is it still just kind of a future initiative?
Yeah, we tested this with Region 8 just as an email check-in to start. And
Okay.
already from that, we saw some success. For instance, the Nevada YPs are really strong in student outreach. But Sacramento has a really strong YP, but really struggles with student outreach. And from that initial email where everyone just introduced themselves and expressed what's working and what isn't, at PWX, the Nevada YPs and the Sacramento YPs met up to help each other collaborate on student outreach. So we know it works. Now we just have to keep the momentum going.
That's great. You talked about a challenge there. My next question is kind of about that: challenges, lessons learned. The young professionals in any industry often face challenges, whether it's finding mentors, gaining credibility with not a lot of experience, or balancing learning with more responsibilities. From your perspectives, what are some key challenges you see in the public works industries for IPs, and how is your initiative, the Young Professionals Initiative, helping to address them? So challenges, and then how are we going to address that? You talked about communication and sharing stories, which might be the starting point, but what else do you think? Maybe Selina, if we could start with you this time.
Yeah, I think one big challenge, and this is something that has really come in the past maybe 5 or 6 years more heavily, but people are not retiring. So the running joke when I graduated college was like, I got 35 more years of this, or however many years of this, and then I can retire. And I'm a decade plus into my career, and that number has not changed. I'm still 35 plus years before I retire. And so the timeline that so many people have referenced for when to become a manager, when to move into these different roles, is totally different now. A lot of people aren't in a position to retire. They're having to work longer. And so how do you grow as a young professional, feel like you're making the change and you're moving in your career when those positions just aren't available? The people are still there. And so it's kind of trying to figure out what works. How do we use our influence? How do we become those managers? How do we work with people that have more experience than us, but maybe are kind of past the point of management? How do we work with that? How do we work through this changing demographic of what our industry is? And so that's one thing that we talk about, a lot of different things of finding your place in your organization, how organizations can build from within and use their own young professionals. Because I think a lot of times when we have openings, we look elsewhere because we expect more experience from someone else. But how do you build up your own young professionals to fit them into the roles that you have? And then how do you create some of these roles for young professionals to feel like they're valued in their organization, not wanting to leave because they can't move up where they're at currently? So we do a lot of conversations around that. Not to say we've solved any of these problems, but we definitely talk about possible solutions and ways that organizations can support young professionals.
Yeah, good point. And one of the things that it can reveal is if you post a position at a higher level and you don't really have internal candidates or what you feel are qualified internal candidates, then perhaps you need to focus more on some workforce development, right? Some training and development to try to generate those candidates, which is challenging. Maybe switching over to you, Elizabeth, what are some of the lessons that you might have learned to help with some of the things that Selina was identifying, or other elements that you think that your initiative that you're working on could help future leaders or other professional organizations in trying to engage YPs?
going off of the PWA as a whole, young professionals in that industry have access to the resources for that. For instance, the PWA has a workforce development initiative and committee focused on this information. I'm not the best one to say exactly how that can be solved, but they do, and we can point people in that direction where they can get help. Recruitment and retention is a hot topic. We don't all have the solution for that, but YP is dedicated to starting at even younger ages. So student outreach, for instance, will go and teach students what public works even means. Start there, explain simply what the public works industry does, and then start building your leaders at a younger age.
Yeah, go ahead, Selina.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. Another thing that we noticed too, especially with this, is part of our role with the Young Professional Committee at the national level is trying to help change the perspective. I think with some of the different generations, there's this conceptual idea of what millennials think, what Gen X thinks, but at the end of the day, that's not necessarily always relevant. A big thing is that people have this idea that young professionals are lazy, that we don't want to work 60-hour weeks. But I think that ties back to what I said before. When my career was 40 years long, I could do harder weeks to try to move up in the organization. But if I know I'm going to be do this until I'm 75, well, I want to take my vacation. I don't want to spend 60-hour weeks until hopefully I can retire at some point. And especially when those positions aren't available to move up into. Why am I working 60-hour weeks if there's nowhere to go up in this organization? So it's understanding that young professionals are very hardworking. We care a lot about what we do, but the world's changed. Things are different. Our career paths don't look the same. So appreciating the perspective that's different than what other people have known for their careers, I think is really important. And we work really hard to kind of get those perspectives out there to understand that just because it's not the same as it was doesn't mean it's not valued and not full of hardworking individuals.
A good point. Many agencies, even if they're resistant, are not going to have an option whether to try to adapt or not, right? We're in a 6G, 6 generations in the workforce for the first time ever. So some adjustments is going to be necessary. Which leads me into kind of my next question about the future of public works agencies and industries. And you started us down this path, Selina and Elizabeth, so maybe we could dig in a little bit further. I'd love to hear your perspective on the future of public works and how you see young professionals shaping the next generation of public works professionals. You talked a little bit, Selina, about what they could do or what they're willing to do, but now looking ahead and shaping, what role does PWA then play in making sure those voices are heard? You talked about some of the resources, but how do they elevate? So maybe back over to you, Elizabeth, on shaping the next generation and how PWA can play a role there.
Yeah, PWA is very supportive of young professionals. Our committee is strong and we're backed by national. And we have things like the YP Summit and the PWX Experience and all of the chapters that have YP groups dedicated to the growth of young professionals. Something else that not a lot of people know is that PWA has a column in the Reporter magazine, a national magazine, for Ps to submit articles every month too. So if YP wants to have their name in a national magazine, they have that option. So what they can do is communicate with us, our committee, pitch their idea, and we can help them get their ideas out there.
Interesting. For the Reporter magazine, are those articles usually focused on the topic of the reporter? Is that how you try to do it, or does it matter wide open for articles?
It depends. I think certain months we do have locked in for the topic or dedicated to planning for PWX or recap of the summit. But for the most part, if somebody has an idea and they want to write an article, it's open to them.
I see. Okay. So maybe a few guide rails depending on the time of the year, but wide open to talk about their interest in public works. Okay. Selina, over to you. The future, you were saying that the YPs have many of the tools. How are they going to use those going forward in public works? And then what other roles could the PWA play there?
Yeah, so definitely, I think a big thing too is kind of this. So we're the Young Professional Committee, and we were very supportive in the growth and development of young professionals through the chapters and the branches. But another kind of initiative of ours is to get more young professionals involved in the organization as a whole. The Young Professional Committee, we're not like the stepping stone for you to get more involved. It's not like you have to hit 35 and then you can do everything else. It's like we want young professionals to be on all of the other national committees, because no matter how much experience you have, your experience matters. Seeing what access you have, or maybe what resources are difficult for you to get if you're 3 years in, is still just as important as what your experience 20 years in. So we're trying to give that access and make sure young professionals are aware that there is no barrier for entry in the organization. There are committees at your chapter level that you can get on. There's also national committees that you can get on as a young professional. None of the national committees have an age restriction to them. So I think, especially if young professionals are trying to get more involved, to have their voices heard and have kind of that impact to be able to advocate for themselves. If you want to plan and support young professional development, 100% go for a YP committee, get on a YP board. But if you're interested just as a young professional and getting involved in the organization, to be able to have that level of advocacy, apply for these committees. Again, there's no age restriction. We want to hear your voice. We want you on them. There just aren't many young professionals that get involved because it's not promoted as well as it should be. And so that's another thing that we're trying to do, is make sure young professionals know that this is open to them. And you can be on these committees and have your voice heard and help impact the way that we as an organization support the profession as a whole.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit intimidating if it's the first time you ever try to do something like that and should be on a national committee when you might not have even been on a committee in your own organization because you're younger. So perhaps you would say then, Selina, but that's your chance to get that experience on a national committee that could then help you back in your own workforce, right? Or in your workplace.
Exactly.
I was just thinking about what you said, Selina, about how people might just think about this more generally, but for YP, something that might be more advantageous to take something like artificial intelligence, for example. You know, perhaps some of the older generations are not going to be as sophisticated in the nuances of what's happening with AI, for example. And that's something where maybe a YP could really step up and offer that perspective and experience, instead of just saying traditionally, well, this has to be, at a leadership level and then top down. Maybe some of these elements could be a little bit grassroots or bottom up. Great. Our next question is about getting involved. For listeners who may be earlier in their careers, obviously more targeted for YP initiatives, or for leaders who want to support them. So we're talking about the different generations in the workforce also. From your perspectives, what's the best way to get involved with the APWA Young Professionals Initiative? Is it through their chapter? Is it going straight to national? Should they go to a conference? What are your thoughts about involvement for YP? And then maybe Elizabeth, and then go to Selina.
Sure. I'll start by saying the chapter level is probably the most accessible, easy. You just talk to somebody who you work with. They're probably a member, and join their email list to find out when the next events are. Have your YP show up, go to a YP event, get to know the folks there, and that just opens the door. Contact your YP representative. So that could be myself, Selina. That information is on the APWA national website. We have an email that you can reach out to, and we have a very responsive liaison who can connect you wherever you need to be to get your answers. We have a LinkedIn page. Follow us there. Selina, what else do we have?
Yeah, I would say you could definitely get in on your chapters. I know for Texas, we're one chapter, but we've got 7 active branches currently. So it's get in where you're local. I know that there's been a lot of turnover in kind of the website development. So if you ever can't find what's going on, because some chapters are not as active as others, especially in the young professional realm, I believe the email is professionals@apwa.org. Just email us, and as a national committee, we'll make sure that you're connected to the right people if you want to start attending meetings. Really, it's just going and meeting people and showing up, and then getting involved at whatever level you want to get involved in.
Most of the information, I think, is just generally available if you go to apwa.org, and maybe you could find your chapter and an initial contact for your region or area. But you could also do it, I think, ground up is what you're saying. Just find a local chapter, they can get you linked in or try to help you with that information. Some of the information in the national website could be for members only, but I don't think these elements are. So that's good for getting involved. So that's great. Just get started one way or another, right? Reach out to somebody in the industry, go to apwa.org, go to a local chapter, whatever it takes. Go try to meet some people and get some information. I think that's good advice. As we start to wrap up here today, and I really appreciate the time both of you are putting into the initiative at the national level and to spend some time today advocating for the initiative with us. Was there anything else that you wanted to add that we missed, we didn't cover enough? And Shane, you really should have talked about this. So we want to get the last word in. Selina, anything from you that we should have discussed that we didn't, or other thoughts?
My only other thought is just understanding young professionals. We kind of look at it as like 18 to 35. I mean, the minute you can start working, you could be in public works. And your life changes so much between those years. Who I was at 18 and who I am today at 33 are two very different people. And so we have a very large demographic that we're working hard to advocate for and give access to for this organization. It's just understanding that there's such a wide gap in experience and where people are at, but we're open to all of them. We're trying to provide education and resources to everyone in that demographic. And so there's no barrier for entry. It's like whether you went to college, whether you didn't, it doesn't matter. You don't need a degree in public works. So just know that no matter where you're at in your career, you have a place in the organization. Through all the hard things, there's always other people that have probably experienced the same. So when you get involved, that's where you really get to build those networks with people that are maybe experiencing the same thing you did, maybe not. Maybe they're at a place in their career that you want to be at, that you could connect with. But this is just the best place to kind of find a home in the profession and feel like you have a place and that you'll be supported throughout your career.
Yeah, that's great. If somebody's having a rough day, go meet with somebody else who might have a similar experience and figure out your pathway through. That's great. Thank you for that. And it's never too early to start. I mean, we said 18, but if you're working, okay, so never too early to start. It's good. Elizabeth, from your perspective, anything that we missed, we should have touched on, or a final perspective from you?
Yeah, I would just encourage folks to send their YP to events. It's always surprising to me when I attend chapter events, or, any region, any chapter, and the demographic of general members to YP is so different. Maybe you'll see one YP there, but why shouldn't they be a part of the chapter as a whole? We're all working together. They should be there too. And for the folks who are a part of APWA at the chapter level, but don't have a YP committee started, I'd encourage them to reach out to us for help. That's what we're there for. We have ideas from other chapters on how to get started. So reach out for help.
Okay, that's great. Encourage others, reach out for help. I think those are both good messages. Thank you for that. Well, Elizabeth, Selina, thank you both for joining us today and for sharing your passion and supporting the next generation of public works leaders, and specifically for the PWA Young Professionals Initiative. It's clearly making a big impact, because just in our conversation, we've gone through what it was like in the beginning to, I should say, the beginning when you all got involved, to how you're doing now with the initiatives. So I know our listeners will be inspired to get involved just based on the progress of the initiative and your willingness to just say get involved. For more information, we recommend people check out the American Public Works Association's website at apwa.org and connect with your local or statewide chapter. As always, thanks for tuning in. I'm Shane Silsby. This has been the Public Works Podcast. And until next time, keep building better communities that continue to connect us all. Thank you very much.